and welcome to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. On today's show, have you ever noticed when it comes to money and financial matters, some people's eyes just glaze over or they might even feel intimidated? If you're among them, you may feel differently after this show, and that is because you can shift your money story. Here to share on how you can do this is finance educator, speaker, and founder and CEO of Wilimek Finance Incorporated, Paula Wilimek. Paula, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Shannon.
So, as I mentioned to you before the show, I did recently hear you speak at a women's event here in Barrie, and I connected with the topic that you were talking about, and you were an engaging speaker. And so I immediately made a note to reach out to you. So I really appreciate you being here. Before we sort of get into our main discussion, can you give us a little bit of your background and a little bit about your business?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, Shannon. So I have been in the industry now as a financial advisor going on 20 years this fall. I know you're like, wow, you look so young. I get that. Um, I started with a big corporation that is now no longer with Freedom 55. It's now Canada Life. And I got great training and all of the things to be a quote unquote financial advisor. And so I go out and see people, but what I was really finding was there seemed to be this disconnect, right? I could see for people what they could or couldn't do with money, sort of logistically or practically, but they couldn't actually move the needle and do the things necessary. I was like, there's something missing here. And when I started talking about money mindset, there was light bulbs that I could see go off in clients' faces that I knew that I was hitting on something that was really missing in the financial industry. So when I added this to my practice, talking about money mindset, I really find that bridges the gap because as you probably know too, Shannon, like a lot of us are all kind of messed up about money, right?
Very true. And I know you're going to
Yes.
have some really good advice for our viewers. And so you just touched on that. What is it about money that makes us all nervous?
That's such a great question. I mean, I feel like so many things. I feel like first off, people often say to me, like, why don't they teach this in school? Which is a valid question. So there seems to be this sort of like tabooness or secrecy around money. But you get to adulthood, and I think it's the expectation is, well, you should have figured this out by now. And so because we hit adulthood thinking like I should know this, we then carry so much shame around it. And I think too, as a woman, I don't know if this resonates with you, but like I think the cultural narrative around women and money, it's not a good one. Nobody's like, wow, women are so great with money. That's not what we're taught and we hear, right? So I think there's a lot of factors, around that and around money mindset.
Yeah, I agree with you. There seems to be a cultural disconnect, maybe that you say about uh, the perception of women and how we manage money. You'll see it all over social media, where
Totally.
if it's a couple, then it's the woman's fault that there's money issues within the family. She's the one with the spending issues and or any whatever that narrative is. And I think you're right. We sort of perpetuate that conversation amongst all of our conversations. It seems whenever we talk about money, there's just this negative connotation to it for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's learned. And I think it can be unlearned, and I think
Mhm.
that's what's really exciting for me. I mean, we all have it. I mean, I talk about this all the time. You do too, but I feel like I'm constantly working on it too. It's not something that we can just erase, but we can make strides and like, of course we should, right? All of us, all women out there should be making all the money, I think.
So let's go into how we're going to make those strides because like you mentioned, we talk to people every day and we probably hear the same comments. I am working paycheck to paycheck. I'm not good with my money. Or like
Mm.
you mentioned before, I wish I'd learned this in school, or somebody should have taught us this information, and all of this negativity around it. So you talk about money mindset. What is that exactly?
Oh, good question. So money mindset is really your unconscious beliefs around money. So the stuff that we absorb from typically our family of origin, that often we're not even aware that we're, you know, living out day to day with our money.
And how do we sort of identify the reasons behind what our mindset is?
Mm. I think it really is listening to what you are telling yourself over and over around money, So if you roll up to coffee with a friend and, say, oh, I know I'm just not good with math or I'm just not good with money. It's like, whoa, 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 pause. Who told you that? Let's really identify, where did that come from? Because and I think you may think this is funny too, but I'm always like, people always say to me, oh, you must be so good at math. I'm like, no, there's not trigonometry involved in being a financial advisor, right? Um, so I think that's so funny that we have lumped those two things together because it's not about that at all. And the things and the behaviors that we have around money, it's not actually being good at math at all, you know?
And so do you think it's having to sort of go back to the source of where that mindset maybe started? Or are we looking back towards what people have told us about ourselves and what we've learned in sort of as we've grown up?
Absolutely. So I often ask, groups of people like, what's your first memory of learning anything about money? And I always give the example of, my mom would sort of panic when she would see us with like coins or, things like that. And I understand now as a parent myself, that was probably more triggered by her fear of us swallowing or choking, but that wasn't what she told us about money. It was, be careful, money is dirty. And I think that's so telling. It wasn't just like, please don't choke on these coins. It was, money is dirty. And that's so loaded a comment, right? About money.
It's so funny that you just mentioned that because my daughter just this morning was playing with a bunch of coins on
No
the
way.
floor. And my
Yeah.
immediate thought, I didn't say anything to her, but my immediate thought is, oh, those are dirty. Go wash your hands.
Right.
And
But we're all like, we put them in, I mean, maybe not post COVID, but like grocery store carts. I always think like, those are disgusting, right? I see kids, lick those, but we're like, yeah, you're fine. You're good. So it's interesting, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, very true. Very true. It's always whatever it is about money, whether you're actually handling it physically or just talking about it, it's that negative. So
Hmm.
how do we switch that conversation?
Oh, I love that. I think the first thing is doing what you and I have just been talking about. So really identifying and listening to the narrative or the scripts that play in your head constantly. I think when you expose those, so to speak, they one have less power over you, and two, you have the ability to say, okay, where did this come from? Who told me this? Was it a parent? Was it just, living in the household I grew up in? And what's interesting is, sharing that narrative with siblings is often they don't have the same thing, So identifying what that is, hearing yourself say things that you're like, do I actually believe that? And questioning that. And then you can change it. You can really rewrite that to be anything that you want. I mean, you know, just because we say money is dirty, rather, does that make it true? Or can we also say money enables me to live a happy life? Like both of those things can be true. We just have to decide, you know, how we want to live our lives and where money fits in there. And I mean, good or bad, however you feel about it, we all need money to live our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
What are some of the sort of biggest obstacles that you see in people when they're trying to change that mindset?
I think it's just our brain is so well worn for that old script that to stop that and to switch it is really uncomfortable. Like literally, I watch people sort of sweat, saying something different to themselves. And it just feels so awkward and uncomfortable. And I really encourage people to lean into the uncomfortableness, which I know all of us as humans, we love change, right? So that's sometimes the hardest part is just to say, you know what? If it's making you uncomfortable, you're hitting up against your money block. Keep going, right? Keep saying the new positive sort of script to yourself because our brains are not actually that creative. When we start to wear that same neural pathway down, that will also stick. You just have to make sure you keep going. Okay. Because it's so easy, especially when you're in that sort of, those downward spirals, Shannon, where you're just like, ugh, I'm having a bad day, or this is not going right. That's where we go. Our brain is like, okay, but yeah, you're right. I'm so bad with money. And that's where you need to catch yourself in that downward spiral to say, okay, hold on. We don't believe that anymore. We're going to insert, I earn $10,000 each and every month with ease and joy, whatever that looks like to you. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's changing. You're right. It's changing that conversation within our own minds. So I'm glad that you gave that example, because that was going to be sort of my next thought was, if somebody comes to you with an inner thought that says, I can't afford to go on a vacation this summer, you can maybe switch that
Mm-hmm.
into, I'm, like you say, I'm earning an income. This is providing for my family and we are doing well. So
Right.
it's just changing into the positive, I think, which is I think is really, really important.
It
Now,
is. It's not easy,
you
but
make
it is. Mm-hmm.
yeah, totally. It is not easy because, like you say, it's ingrained in our minds and in our conversations that this preconception about money and the negativity surrounding it. Now, you make note on your website that when it comes to clients who want to move forward in their finance journey, the first two steps in the process are saying hello and getting to know each other. What does that mean?
Saying hello and getting to know each other is literally just that. I mean, you talking about money is very loaded, as we both have noted. So you really need to be comfortable knowing that, whoever I'm sitting down with, we fit, so to speak, right? And you feel comfortable asking and maybe re-asking the same questions. I think that's really important. I hear that a lot in our industry too, like, I don't understand what this person is saying to me or whatever. So it's really just sitting down, seeing if this feels comfy, and then let's move on from there.
So finding that good fit when you're talking to another financial professional, I think, is finding that person where you do feel comfortable to maybe ask those questions that you might feel ashamed about, or ashamed that you don't know the answer to, but you still feel comfortable
Mhm.
enough to ask the question with somebody. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't you think that's so very important? I mean, I think I often have people come to me and say, like, I know I should have, contributed more to my RSP. And I'm like, hold on, like, don't shit all over yourself. Okay, we will figure out what the best route for you is. Like, the first thing we need to talk about are your goals and move you towards things that you're actually excited to achieve.
Well, if you're one of those ones who is ready to evolve past your old money mindset and old money habits that may be preventing you from reaching your financial goals, Paul is going to have some great advice for you when Money Matters returns after the break.
This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Mark your calendar, Southbury. Your new go-to Metro is opening May 8th at Maple View Drive in Yonge Street. From fresh Ontario produce to bread baked in-store daily. Join us on May 8th for the great grand opening deals. Visit metro.ca for more details.
This is a brain in urgent need of mental health care. But because 3 out of every 4 Indigenous people experience racism in healthcare, she may not get the help she needs. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.
Welcome back to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. My guest today is Paula Wilimek, finance educator, speaker, and founder and CEO of Wilimek Finance Incorporated. We're talking about how you can change your money mindset so you can evolve past those money habits that may be holding you back. And as you heard, once you have a better understanding of where the source of this money mindset is coming from, you might be able to move forward financially with more confidence And a key part of moving forward is knowing your goals. So, Paula, when it comes to setting those financial goals, what should we be thinking about?
You should actually be excited about achieving these goals. I think that we, as I said in the last segment, there's a lot of shitting on ourselves about money. And I think, yes, I'm not advocating for people to be in crushing, credit card debt, and I often coach people out of debt. But it's really about like, what is going to excite you? Is it about, I want to save for a trip around the world, or I want to make sure that we have a retirement that looks a particular way? Those are very different conversations than, okay, can we max out your RSP? You know? So I think that's the biggest thing, is that you are emotionally invested in goals and you're actually excited about them.
And in your workshops, you make note that it's important to set those effective money goals. What makes a goal, or a money goal specifically, effective?
I think really, one, making it exciting. Two, breaking it down so that it feels doable. Okay. Because whenever we're overwhelmed, especially with things about money, what do? We sort of say, forget it. It's over my head. I can't do this. And we sort of just go back 3 steps, right? Whereas if you were like, okay, I need to do X, we've implemented that this much is going to be contributed into whatever it looks like, whatever you're trying to achieve, then we can just sort of set it and forget it, until you're ready to do and move on whatever goal that was.
And how often should we sort of be reviewing our goals? Is that should we be doing that on a regular basis?
Absolutely. I mean, especially if they're things that you're excited about. And that depends on what that looks like, right? So let's say it is an annual trip that you want to go on. So I would say, like, absolutely check in and make sure that at least every 3 months you're on track for meeting that goal. And that's going to be so exciting. What an amazing thing to be looking forward to, right? You can plan the excursions, you can plan the spending money, you can plan the beach cover up that you're going to wear, right? So that's a really fun goal. But yeah, absolutely check in and make sure, and especially if you need accountability, right? That's what people like you and I are here for.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is it possible that our goals might change?
Of course, because if we had a crystal ball, well, one, we'd be a lot wealthier. And two, like, life has a way of sneaking up on us, so to speak, right? It doesn't go always to plan. So yeah, I mean, we have to plan for those contingencies as well. And I'm sure you have conversations like that too, right? It's I always say it's the unsexy side of what, I get to do. But I've seen time and time again that planning for those things, really puts people in the sort of power position. And when I say those things, it might be like, dying prematurely, getting diagnosed with an illness. We never like plan on things like that. So having things in place that are actually building our wealth is also really, really key.
So when you sit down with a client and you're talking with them about their goals, do you help them sort of set up almost like a schedule to help them sort of meet that goal up when sort of the time expires, kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will map it out. We will say, like, okay, we know that you need to do X amount into your TFSA, let's say every 2 weeks. And I will put in my calendar too, like, I'm going to check in with you a month from now, 3 months from now, whatever that looks like, to get an update. And it's so funny because I love doing that accountability because I love cheering clients on. But I often get like, well, this happened to my car, or I had a huge bachelorette party I had to go to, which I don't know, those are expensive. And I'm like, of course, that's why we also planned that you had some extra, emergency savings or whatever it is, so that, that's okay. Life is allowed to happen around you. That doesn't mean you messed it up, right?
And that's important too, I think, because our traditional mindset says if we set a financial goal, we need to meet it. Oh,
yes.
As in sort of in addition to that, though, it can be, yes, we might have these financial goals, but we're also preparing for things that are, like you say, are happening around us. so that we are completely prepared for any sort of change that might happen. And I think that's really important because
Yes.
like you say, we want to get rid of that negativity. So you don't want to feel the guilt of maybe not being able to meet that goal that month or whatever that happened to be, because it's okay, right? You've set
Yeah,
the plan in place.
absolutely. Exactly. So if
Yeah.
you, and I think that's what I see clients struggle with that the most is sort of the being comfortable, sort of moving through the journey and the process of money is uncomfortable because again, we're so used to everything being absolute, immediate, instant gratification. So it's sitting in that uncomfortable piece of like, okay, you're doing the right things. It's okay, you know, and I don't know if you're seeing that too, Shannon, even just with the media, the social media around what's going on right now in our in the States, right? So I'm also like coaching clients on like, this is your RSP. It's gonna be okay. Like this is how the markets move, right? Like, yeah. So it's about just like, you know, you've put the plan in place. We know you're gonna get to your goal at the end of this. Just keep going, right? It's sort of again unsexy, right?
Yeah, and that's it.
Mm.
Now, speaking of that unsexy part,
Yeah.
so I know you offer a lot of workshops to help people with this. Does it sometimes come down to the budget?
Oh, the dirty word, eh?
Yeah.
So the first thing I always say to clients when I even want to propose a budget or to look at their expenses is like, okay, we're not looking at a budgeting like dieting because I think our instinct is to be like, I'm going to slash all my expenses. I'm going to live on, you know, craft dinner for the next 3 months. I'm like, no, that's not what we want to do. We're just observing where our money is going. That's it. You're just observing, you know? So let yourself off the hook with that. Yes, it's very important though to know where your money's going. Okay. Because when we have that knowledge and that awareness, what can we do with that? We can do so many powerful things. We can say, like, okay, I love my coffee, but I don't need to spend $75 a month on it, whatever that looks like. I think that might be hard to only spend 75, but hey, you know what I mean? So you can really do intentional things with your money when you are fully aware of where it needs to and you want it to go.
I think you're absolutely right. You become much more empowered when
Yes,
you know exactly what money's coming in, exactly where it's being spent, and tracking it consistently. And
absolutely.
you suddenly feel like you are in control, which a
Yes,
lot of the people that I see on a daily basis do not feel that way. So I think it's so important.
yes.
Now, another one of your workshops, I think you focus on credit. Now, I think it's important that we realize there's been information from Equifax Canada and TransUnion. Many Canadians, including here in Ontario, are struggling to make ends meet and unfortunately relying on credit. So, what do our viewers maybe need to know about how to build credit to make it work for you?
Mm, that's a big sort of matzo ball of a question. You know, I really wish that credit companies and financial advisors, I would love for all of us to work together. That's just maybe, that's another show, maybe. Because I think that's another thing that people don't entirely understand is credit is not all that. You know, we can use credit to enhance our financial situation, but I think often we're not totally versed on the ways to do that. So, a couple of things if you are in, let's say, credit card debt and really want to get to a place where you don't feel like this is where all your money's going, I would say do a couple of things. So, first, build a cash cushion. So even if that's just $1,000 you have in a savings account, just to make sure, because as we have said, life can go sideways on you. You have that money that you don't keep perpetuating the debt cycle. So the next thing I would do after you have that $1,000 is I'm an advocate of utilizing the debt snowball. Now, I didn't make that up. I know you're probably familiar with it too, but I love, and you can Google the debt snowball to see exactly how it works, because I think it really gives clients those really quick psychological wins when paying down debt, that then that momentum really lends itself for them to keep going. Because sometimes it often feels like I'm just chucking money into a black hole. But again, when you have a plan and you can see the light at the end of the proverbial debt tunnel, you can keep going like that. So I think that's a really powerful way for you to do that. And again, as you said, it's a really empowering thing for you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That snowball strategy, I think, is really effective because it's, you focus on the smallest balance first, pay it off as quick as you can, and focus everything onto the next balance. And you say you get that more immediate um, reward because you've been successful in paying something off, and you're moving on to the next one. I think it's a really effective strategy for a lot of people. So I agree with that absolutely.
Great.
Now, the other part, I think, of building our financial confidence and changing our mindset comes down to investing, which, of course, you do on a daily basis, and you help people do this on a daily basis. But this can be very intimidating for a lot of people. Why is that?
I mean, I think that we've sort of, again, we hear a narrative, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this too, is like this, like, well, I invested in this stock and I've made this amount. And I think that we kind of get caught in this, like, it has to be the right place for me to invest. So we kind of get paralyzed with like, okay, but where is that? And because there are so many different options out there, I think people don't move forward because they're scared of doing it wrong. And I always say to that, like, if you're in the market, you're doing it right. Okay. Especially if whatever you are invested in and for. So, you are doing that towards your goals again. So essentially having a hot stock or whatever that looks like doesn't matter, because you being in the market is going to be far more powerful for you long term than doing the next, like, get rich quick stock or whatever it is, right? I think we like that idea. But at the same time, we all live busy lives. Like, that's why we have jobs, so that we can help people to get to their goals. You don't need to be an expert in the market. You can just move forward and make sure that you are invested in it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think from my perspective, I think it is intimidating when you see all these different products, all these different ways to
Yes.
invest your money, but you don't know what they do. And that's why I think it's so important to talk to somebody like yourself to
Mm.
say, okay, these are what my goals are. This is where I want to be in X number of years. And how do we do that? Can you point us in the right direction? So I
Absolutely.
really appreciate, all of that knowledge that you have. And you've given us some really great advice today. So thank you so much for being here. Can you share with us how people can reach out to you if they want to take one of your
Absolutely.
workshops, anything like that?
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks again, Shannon, for having me. I've had such a great time chatting with you. I'm sure we could talk about so many other things around money and what we see. But yeah, people can contact me in a couple of ways. My website, WilimekFinancial.com. And also I'm really active on Instagram. So Paula_Wilimek Financial Advisor, which if you get to the Wilimek, you'll find me because there's not too many of us out there. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is a great conversation.
Well, Paula, thanks again for being here and taking the time. And I also want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. Until next time, I'm Shannon Jackson.